This week in South Florida, it's Super Bowl Sunday, and all we can say is, yeah, football's good, but we have something better. We've got Dave Barry. The syndicated columnist and Miami Herald veteran has a new book out. It's called Insane City, and it's laugh out loud funny. The city in question is, of course, ours, and Dave creates many Miami moments. This could be the book Tom Wolfe wishes he had written about Miami. Dave will be here to talk about it. Plus, have you ever been ripped off when you're traveling? Makes you mad. Well, wait till you see what one South Beach restaurant is doing to tourists. A $210 lunch special? The stories people are talking about this week in South Florida.
Special.
Good morning. Glad you could join us. We have something very special for you today. 2 words, Dave Barry. You have read his columns and other pieces in the Miami Herald for years, laughed out loud as you did. As Carl Hiaasen says, Dave is one of the funniest writers alive. I know that's what Carl said, because the quote is plastered across the front of Dave's new novel, Insane City. I finished it last night. I had to stop reading it in front of my wife because I kept bursting out in laughter. Then I'd have to read her the passage. It was fun, but it kind of slowed me down. Dave, great to have you come in.
Well, thanks for having me on.
All right, so any book that has a line in a chapter that says, your mature male orangutan is not a looker. I've got to love it.
Oh, yeah, there is an orangutan in this book. His name is Trevor. And when I wrote the book at first, I was inspired by an actual orangutan, a real orangutan,
really?
on Jungle Island. And have you ever seen them? They're like very interesting animals. Like even
they give them iPads down there too, or something.
They have these huge cheek pouches and the little tiny, and they have beards. Even the women have beards. So I just liked this guy, Trevor, and I thought, well, okay, I'll put him in this one scene where he ends up getting hold of the wedding ring of the groom in a very important wedding.
Yes.
And then he was going to be out of there. But he was such a great character, Trevor was. I did a little research on orangutan, and he becomes sort of a romantic lead. And he falls in love with 2 women in this book.
Right. He keeps touching Megan's hair as they're going down I-95 in this Escalade with the 22-inch rims, as you put it. Let's kind of back up and let people know that there is a narrative to the to the novel. A couple, Tina and Seth, are getting married out at the Ritz-Carlton on Key Biscayne, and as Seth keeps saying to Tina, it's complicated.
Yeah.
There are some complications.
Yeah, Tina is this very type A person, and she's planned a perfect wedding as bride. She's very rich, successful, nothing ever goes wrong in Tina's life. Right. And by God, she's going to have the most perfect wedding ever. The one mistake she made was to hold it in Miami, where sometimes things go wrong.
Right.
And pretty much everything that can go wrong in Miami happens to Seth, particularly Seth, including he ends up...
Seth is the groom,
He's the groom, and this is a guy who never had an issue, doesn't care about anything, is not concerned about anything. Right. Suddenly he becomes thrust in the middle of, in this case, immigration becomes a big issue for Seth.
Because he saves the life of a Haitian, I'm not going to give too much away, but a Haitian woman and her babies.
He ends up not intending to, he's kind of just trying to sober up on the beach. He rescues a Haitian woman and ends up with a family of Haitians living in his suite in the Ritz-Carlton and a stripper taking care of them on his wedding weekend. This is really not the ideal scenario for the perfect wedding.
But that's only the beginning.
Oh, yeah, but lots more happens.
Then he has to retrieve the ring, which is where he really encounters Trevor. At Primate Encounter, which sounds very much like kind of Monkey Jungle.
Monkey Jungle-ish, yeah. Which Monkey Jungle we love, of course, and we hope they don't sue us here at Channel 10.
Well,
if they do sue anybody, Channel 10 probably is a better target than me, though.
Deep pockets. One of the many things that I laughed when I would encounter this is that there are some characters who seem to have names from people in real life.
Oh, yeah.
Among others, for instance, there is a doorman, Haitian American doorman at the Ritz-Carlton named Carl Just.
Carl Just, who is also, that happens to be coincidentally, and it's purely coincidental.
Oh, I'm sure.
The name of a photographer at the Miami.
Great photographer.
A great guy of Haitian descent. Right. Also, there are 2 thugs, just semi-competent thugs in here, whose names, and this again, pure coincidence. Really? There may be, I understand there are people with the same name out there, but pure coincidence. Paul Castronovo and Ron Brewer.
Yeah.
play the role.
Paul and young Ron, I think, is how we know them on the radio.
No, I actually asked their permission. I said, I want to put you guys in this book, and you will be bad guys.
And they said,
"Oh, great,
go for it."
They wanted to be. I needed to, and there is Paul right now.
Yeah, that's Paul. And I want to point out that at the controls upstairs right now, the director of the show is Linda Castronovo, and
which is why we're seeing so much of Paul on this show.
I suspect so. But Linda did tell me Paul wants a bigger cut of the profits.
Paul wants to be played in the movie by Brad Pitt. And you can see it. I mean, a lot of people, they're always being confused, the two of them.
Well, talking about this, a previous novel, which I liked a lot too, called Big Trouble, was made into I thought, a charming, funny movie. And I'm thinking about this one. I was thinking Ben Stiller is probably too old to play Seth, but you need a Ben Stiller type, don't you?
He would be that kind. Yeah, he's that kind of guy. He's a loser, really. I mean, the truth is, he's not a loser, but he's a slacker.
Yeah, but he's just sweet-hearted.
A very sweet guy, and that's kind of the heart of the plot. He's a guy who really doesn't want to have to make decisions. He's happy to have this high-powered Type A wife, to be in charge of their lives.
Tina has planned everything fairly well.
And Tina is the one who's interested in causes and everything. So theoretically, she'd be the one who'd be
immigration.
Right.
I mean, she's marched.
But not when it's her wedding.
I also see Vince Vaughn. I don't know if he'd be Big Steve or Marty, but
he would be
I've been trying to cast this as I began reading.
Well, I think that's admirable. Yeah, there's the groom posse. They call themselves.
Yeah.
They get in a lot of trouble at the very beginning. They go to South Beach. They try to get to Key Biscayne, but the cab driver. And I don't know if you've ridden in too many Miami cabs. Cab driver cannot find Key Biscayne. Yeah, it takes him. I've never lived in a city, and I don't mean to be criticizing all cab drivers out there.
Of course.
But have you ever lived in a city where fewer cab drivers knew how to get places than in Miami?
No, and they do get to the Clevelander, and that's where.
A lot of bad things happen. They decided to just have a couple of quick
drinks.
ones at the Clevelander, and like 5 hours later, many bad things have happened to them.
Well, Dave, I got to say, it is a lot of fun, but, in some ways there's some serious themes here. I don't want to mischaracterize the book because it's just funny as it can be, but, I mean, part of what
I wanted there to be a plot with an actual, that would actually matter, so that as you said, I mean, it's meant to be a comedy, but as you see what's happening to poor Seth, you realize he has actually a serious decision to make that affects people's lives. And he's not used to that, and that's kind of the heart of the serious part of the plot.
Right, and then I have to say there is a captain of industry, a general of industry named, among others, there's Wendell Corliss, or Wendell expletive Corliss, as he comes to be known later, and he and one of the groomsmen, part of the groom posse, Marty, have this unbelievably amusing conversation after they've had a number of marijuana-laced brownies.
What happens is Seth's parents, a retired couple, have marijuana-laced brownies, which they get from their sister in Los Angeles, and they like them they make up reasons why they need these things, but accidentally these brownies get served at the rehearsal dinner, and this captain of it, this billionaire, ingests a bunch of marijuana without realizing it, and ends up having, and this is my favorite, we were talking about this earlier, my favorite part of the book, the conversation that Marty and the slacker and Wendell have on the beach, where they end up, because they're hungry, buying 2 restaurants.
It's a great, one of the best scenes I've read in a long time. I do want to say, and I mean this, I read and wrote something about Tom Wolfe's novel Back to Blood, and he did all this research, and there is kind of an accuracy to what Tom wrote, but without writing a novel about Miami, you have, because you love the city for all its weirdness, you've got really more about in my view, what Miami is about and its weirdness than Tom Wolfe did.
Wow, I'm flattered to hear that. I have not read his book because I didn't want to read it while I was writing a book about Miami. I hear it's wonderful, but I'm honored to hear that. Thank you.
All right.
Have you been drinking or?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
I have to say, one of the things that you don't write quite as often for the Herald as you did for all those years when you became a burned out case, but you do write the year in review. It appears the end of December, 1st of January, and It's really just about as funny, Dave, as anything that I know. So let me ask you, here we are, it's only February. You got any candidates yet for?
You have to look at January as one of those. It was a pretty good month. I mean, I just took a few notes, but you had Lance Armstrong,
Right.
and you had. And now I'm blanking on all the sudden revelations that we had in January.
Well, among other things, of course, we had Steve Ross asking for just a couple of $100 million to upgrade the Joe Robbie Stadium, as I still like
say
to
it's
call
time
it.
for a benefit concert. I mean, we have not done enough for our billionaire sports owners in this town.
That's right.
I think the Marlins, their stadium's already a year old. Let's while we're at it, let's build them another one. Let's give everyone who needs a stadium. That's why we're here. That's our job as taxpayers.
No referendum.
No, let's not vote. Let's just give them the money they need.
Yeah, other revelations. I have seen this complete 180 that Governor Rick Scott has done. He suddenly sees education as a good thing, and he wants to spend some money, give every teacher $2,500. That's fine with me, but just only a few months ago, he wasn't in that position.
I wonder what could be causing him to change his mind at
Re-election?
this time. Oh, that's right. I forgot all about that. I'm sure the governor did as well, but that'll work out.
All right. We want to point out that at 1:30 this afternoon, you are going to be at Temple Judea.
I'll be leading services, in fact. I will be there.
You're going to be speaking. Mitchell Kaplan, our friend
Books and
from
Books.
Books and Books, has invited you. It's going to be a big crowd, but you could still go down there. And Dave will be reading from Insane City. Here it is. It is just a terrific book. And Dave, as always, love talking with you.
Same here. Thank you.
All right. Come back soon.
You're a treasure, Michael.
Well, I don't know about that.
Yes, no, we are.
All right, Dave Berry. Thanks, Dave. Up next, a little more Miami absurdity, a South Beach restaurant that is surprising patrons with astronomical checks. $210 for the lunch special? Yup, stay with us.
This Week in South Florida with Michael Putney. Thanks for watching.
Don't you just hate it when you travel someplace and you know you're getting ripped off, but you can't do anything about it? Well, of course. Well, pity the tourists and locals who are going to a South Beach restaurant called La Baguette because they are having a very bad and a very expensive experience there. Local 10's Ross Palumbo has the story.
It's one of the newest hotspots on South Beach. But a meal here at La Baguette, costing a cool $330, left two women ice cold.
This place is a ripoff. We were scammed.
They say they came here for lunch, saw that most items were around $20, then, at the suggestion of the waitress, ordered the special.
Did you ever ask how much the special was?
No, we didn't. We didn't, but based on the other items on the menu, you would think that it wouldn't be triple digits.
When the bill came, the special alone was in the triple digits at $210. The drinks, $50. Even the already included tip was $46.80.
Oh my God, look at this bill. How are we going to pay for it?
Even the manager couldn't believe it.
$210 for a special.
Here?
Yeah, here.
No, I don't think so.
But when we showed him the receipt,
Two people, $210.
he suddenly seemed to remember something.
Big platter with a steak, seafood, something like that.
You don't think it's odd that your prices are $53 and below, but all of a sudden there's one special that's $210? You don't think that's odd?
No.
We ourselves had also gotten some sort of special treatment just minutes before.
What would you like to drink, sir?
We ordered coffee, and since the price wasn't listed, also had to ask.
And how much is that?
But when our bill came, it was 60% more than what we were told.
The same thing just happened to me. I just ordered two coffees. He said they were $5 a piece, and then when the bill came, they were $8 a piece.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's wrong in the computer. And they fixed it already.
Others on the internet claim to have had similar unfixed issues, posting warnings like "don't do it" because of surprise prices, hoaxes, and trickery.
You are misleading the public, not only those of us that live here, but you're also misleading the tourists.
Late today, the owner did come forward, saying they would now fix everything.
And yes, they did not disclose how much was the price. It should have been We took an immediate action today.
The whole experience, though, leaving a bad taste in at least 2 mouths.
I think they did scam us. It's that old bait and switch. I feel they should give us back some money for it.
Well, Ross tells us the women in the story did manage to get a refund of half the bill. Still, this is not the kind of hospitality South Florida wants to show its tourists. All right, up next, we will open the mail. And now for the mail, we got a lot about our interview here last week with Norman Brayman on using tax money to pay for upgrades at Sun Life Stadium. Pam Stack wrote to say, I just don't believe that the public should be funding any part of a professional sports team without getting a share of the profits from the jump. And shame on the Dolphins for asking without a referendum. On the same topic, we got this comment from Robert Malone. He says, I agree with Mr. Brayman on his informed analysis. This is in stark contrast with what the leadership in this town depends on when making decisions with taxpayers' dollars. And there was this email from Charles Wellens. Charles wrote to say Joe Robbie built a stadium with his cash and aided by private investors. If Joe Robbie was able to build the stadium without public money, why is public cash required to upgrade the stadium? On the subject of gun control, we got this email from Robert Glazebrook. He says it is already a federal felony for a firearms dealer to ship a firearm to anyone other than a firearms dealer who has a federal firearms license. It is already a federal felony for the dealer receiving that firearm to give it to you without doing a background check. We welcome your comments about any topic in the news. Email is the best way to reach us. Send it to twisf@local10.com, right the old-fashioned way. Drop it in the mail. Reach me by Facebook. Still to come, my personal perspective about Dan Marino's extramarital affair. Has this really been blown out of proportion? Before we leave you this morning, my personal perspective about Dan Marino and his affair that produced a child, a little girl. The tabloid New York Post went crazy with the story, but it was also covered by the mainstream media, including Local 10. My question is, why has this been made into such a big deal? Well, first, because Dan Marino is a big deal in South Florida. He was the face of the Dolphins for all those years, and since then, he has been the face of his own charitable foundation and other philanthropic efforts. Just last week, Dan sponsored a Walk for Autism. Dan Marino, who I do not know personally, is a person who has gained our respect over the years. He lost some with news that he had had this affair 7 years ago with the woman and they had a child. But Marino, unlike many other athletes, didn't turn his back on her or the baby, didn't run away from his responsibilities. He apparently has paid out millions of dollars to the woman and their little girl. So here's the bottom line. We learned this week Dan Marino is a fallible human being. He was a married guy who saw a pretty woman and lost his bearings. He is not the first guy to do so. He won't be the last. Marino says this is a private matter and he has taken responsibility for his actions personally and financially. I'll take him at his word. This really is a matter for Marino and his wife. As long as he continues to take care of that little girl and contribute to our community, Dan Marino will have my respect. That's my perspective for this week. Hope you have a great Sunday. Remember, as always, stay informed, get involved. I'm Michael Putney.